That this has done fundamental damage to the economy and to the markets?
I don't think so, Lou. I would say if you saw as far as the markets are concerned, if you saw what was going on in this city over the past couple of days to reconstruct the infrastructure, to relocate tens of thousands of people to alternate sites, to clear debris, it's hard to imagine it having a fundamental effect on the markets. That I don't expect. And I think this economy is much too vibrant, much too strong, and much too resilient, as are the people of this country, to let any event like this create permanent damage. I think this will be a situation that will be overcome in short order, and we'll get on with life.
Finally then, Dave, in terms of specific areas of investment, what has changed in the past week? What should investors do differently than they would have done a week ago?
Again, Lou, I hate to speak in generalities because I know you can't invest with generalities, but I think the one thought that I want to leave with people is not to react with emotionally or with fear. Your securities are safe, your deposits are safe. Take your time, evaluate the opportunities, get professional advice, and I'll repeat, I think there will be opportunities in the market as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Okay, Lou, it's nice to be here again.
To broaden our perspective from Wall Street to Main Street, with me tonight are three leading observers of the economy. Princeton professor Alan Blinder was a leading economic advisor to President Clinton, was appointed by him as vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, and serves now as a partner in Promontory Financial Group. Tom Gallagher of the ISI Group has no peer in analyzing the links between politics in Washington and the economy everywhere else. And Steve Forbes, who joins us by satellite from his office in New York, is the former candidate for the Republican presidential nomination, who is now once again president and editor-in-chief, respectively, of the company and magazine that bear his family name. Steve, what has changed economically and financially as a result of this week's events?
Well, obviously, certain industries are going to be short-term hurt a lot: financial services, hotels, airlines, and others. But I think even though the economy is taking a short-term hit, I think it is going to spur Washington to do things that it hadn't been doing before, namely the Federal Reserve providing adequate liquidity for the economy, which it has not been doing in recent months. I think there's a likelihood, too, that Congress will pass a meaningful tax cut, which wasn't likely before September 11th.
Do you think this will push us into recession?
I think we're already in a recession, and for a few weeks with the uncertainty, the recession will deepen. But I think the seeds are going to be planted for helping us pull out of the recession by the Fed providing that liquidity and Congress finally doing something constructive and giving a meaningful tax cut, including a reduction in the capital gains tax.
Let me bring in Alan Blinder. What's your view on what has changed this week?
Well, I think everything has changed. This economy, as you know, was sort of teetering on the brink. I don't think it was in recession, as Steve says, but it was very, very close. And an event like this is bound to take a toll on consumer spending. It would be a big surprise if it didn't. And as you know, it's been on the consumer's shoulders that this economy has been standing. Now, recessions don't last forever, and this economy will snap back from this recession vibrantly, I'm sure. But I think it's going to be a rough time between now and then.
Steve suggests that this will lead to more tax cuts and an easier Federal Reserve policy. Do you agree with that?
I rather doubt that it'll lead to more tax cuts. Who knows, actually, but it's certainly leading to more government spending of various sorts, and I do think it'll lead to an easier monetary policy than we would have had otherwise, for the simple reason that the economy is going to be weaker and the Fed's going to have to do more.
Tom Gallagher, let me bring you in. What in Washington has changed in terms of economic policy?
Well, really everything has changed. I think now both fighting and coping with catastrophic terrorism has become the overriding objective of policymakers in Washington. And from an economic perspective, there's the need to use monetary and fiscal policy to address the hit to the economy, as we've been discussing. But I wouldn't overlook the importance of everything else the government is doing to try to make people feel safer again. I think that's the real key to how long the economy is going to be hit here. The more people feel like this is a one-time event, the more people are going to return to their normal behavior. So the success of law enforcement officials in convincing us that there won't be any follow-up incidents, the success of the anti-terrorism policy, including the retaliation, I think will go a long way toward determining how long the economy is affected by this.
Steve wants more tax cuts. Alan is skeptical. Those were the two least surprising developments of the evening. What do you think will be the mood in Congress?
I think the first order of business is going to be to spend money on the immediate priorities of rebuilding and assisting New York and in the Pentagon and addressing the defense needs. I think the next order of business will be to see if there is a bipartisan consensus on how to provide further stimulus to the economy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they can overcome this hurdle. They haven't done a very great job in trying to work in a bipartisan way on economic issues so far. If they can do that, then I think that we will see another round of stimulus still this year.
Steve Forbes, one casualty of the week would appear to be the talk about keeping Social Security's surplus in a lockbox. Do you think that has now vanished from our economic thinking?
I hope so. The whole lockbox was a myth. As you know, when Social Security gets money and doesn't spend it, the money goes to the government and Social Security gets an IOU. Whether the government spends the money, rebates the money, or does something else with it, like paying off bondholders, Social Security is left with an IOU. So the quicker we get away from this silly lockbox stuff and get to what we can do to get this economy moving, the better.
How much do you expect defense spending to be increased?
Well, I think finally we will get some real defense spending increases instead of the paltry sums, small sums that even this administration has been talking about. There's a lot that has to be done to rebuild what was run down in recent years, and there are a lot of new weapon systems and research that must be gotten underway, especially to fight this new form of terrorism. So I think there's going to be a very different mood in Congress than there was just a few days ago.
Alan, what's your view on the lockbox question?
Well, I think you want to really think of the lockbox as what it was, which was a symbol for the need to pay down the debt over time. It was a very convenient and numerically also sensible symbol, but to hold to it in a situation like this would be ludicrous, and I don't think anybody is going to. There was beginning to be too much Hooverite sort of talk in Washington, and I think that's gone now. But I think once we're over this crisis, restoring some fiscal prudence will take some priority again, but not right now.
How much do you expect defense spending to increase?
Well, I don't know what kind of number, but I think it's going to be substantial. And of course, none of us know what sort of military response there's going to be to this crisis. I think my personal opinion is likely to be significant. At a time like that, everybody rallies around the military, and there will be substantially more military spending, I'm sure.
Let me stay with you and then get back to Steve on this one, because another issue in which you disagreed this evening was whether we are already in a recession. What's your view of the condition of the economy now?
Well, you know, it's very close. The last quarter was positive 0.02 and could be revised down to a negative. This quarter didn't look like it was coming in negative, but it was not coming in strong for sure. So I think, you know, you're talking about whether you're on one side or the other side of a dividing line. There isn't any difference between us, really. These are slight nuances of difference. I'm sure we both think the economy's been very weak for the last few quarters.
And do you think it will now be much weaker?
I think it will. I mean, as I said, it's been the consumer that's been the bright spot, and consumers are frightened by this, as they have every reason to be, and it's going to take a while to restore confidence and to restore spending, more to the point.
In your view, what can and or should the government do to restore consumer confidence?
Well, I think there needs to be monetary and fiscal policy responses, and there will be. I think what Tom was talking about restoring a sense of security, I'm not talking about economic security, but more conventional security, is crucial. This is the time, as many observers have said, that people look to their national leaders. They look especially to the president, and you know, it's a stern test for the new president to project the kind of image that Americans will follow and feel better about what's going on.
Are we going to use up the proposed or projected budget surpluses over the next couple of years?
The entire surplus? I rather doubt it. That's a very large number. So the violation of the so-called lockbox, there's a lot of distance between there and using up the entire unified surplus. I rather doubt that it'll be that large.
Steve, what can and should the government do for the consumer's confidence in your view?
Well, I think the key thing is to show that, one, they can start getting real things done on the defense front. and also in terms of getting a tax bill through. And if they wanted to do another rebate, even though I don't think those do much good long term as part of a broad tax cut, including capital gains, go ahead and do it and get those checks out before Thanksgiving. But the key thing, too, is to get the Federal Reserve to stop dehydrating the economy the way the Bank of Japan has done their own economy and pump in liquidity like they've done. I hope they don't see this as a short-term measure, but as more of a longer-term measure. And then I think the markets would rally. I think the economy would come back next year fairly strongly.
Up to now, the hero of the American economy has clearly been the consumer, whose spending has kept things moving forward, however feebly, while business investment has deteriorated. Is there a chance now that we'll go the other way, that business investment will pick up enough to bail out the consumer?
I don't think so until the businesses see that there's going to be an opportunity to have new outlets for investment, until we get some of the regulatory hurdles that stand in the way of getting that last mile of fiber to homes and small offices. I think businesses are going to be very, very cautious. I think it's going to be investors and consumers who are going to respond more quickly to a tax bill and to easing by the Federal Reserve. I think in this case, businesses will be, at least for a few months, lagging those two other sectors.
Tom Gallagher, will we get subsidies for certain industries now?
I think very quickly Congress will probably do something for the airline industry. I noticed today the Treasury Department actually waived penalties on paying some taxes for the airline industry, and next week the Congress will probably take some action. That's an industry at high fixed cost, no revenues virtually this week, so I think you'll see some specific action on that front.
The energy area was controversial before this all came up. If the price of oil escalates, will there be new action in Washington?
Well, that's a tough question, because that's still the energy issues, the argument to drill in Alaska, for example, is still very emotional, and I'm not sure that the pressures will be that great to change the outlook on that front. One of the things I think is important is the extent to which this anti-terrorist new policy initiative is going to affect the politics in the Middle East, and even the possibility of extending military action to Iraq. That's the sort of thing that could have some impact on the energy markets.
Steve, will we ever feel as safe as we did a week ago?
No, not for a good long time. The fact that terrorism of that scale could happen on American soil was something we might have seen in the movies, but we'd never experienced it before in our national existence. And so I think there is going to be a new sense of vulnerability that we really haven't had since the early days of the Cold War, and certainly since the Second World War. So that is going to be a fact of life. But also I think it has the counterpoints that we are now finally going to do something about terrorism, not just do these pinprick retaliations, but go after the sources of it and the governments that support it. It's not going to be easy, but it can be done. That kind of thing can be suppressed, just as the British suppressed piracy a century and a half ago on the high seas. We'll do it with international terrorism today.
Alan, we have time for a sentence from you on that subject.
Well, I think we're not going to feel secure as we did for quite a long time. I think the economy is going to snap back before this sort of sense of security snaps back, frankly.
Thanks very much to all three of you. Precisely what will happen to the stock market and to the economy as a result of this week's shattering events, no one, not even the world-class minds we heard from tonight, can say with assurance. But what else is new? What's more important, we can say with assurance that our country remains massively strong, militarily, economically, and most of all in its people. Eventually, that reality will reassert itself in the economy and in the financial markets. We have been given a horrible wake-up call by this stunning violation of our fundamental public safety. And the repercussions of that unprecedented shock will surely change our lives and our lifestyles throughout the new century. But as that flag vendor's sign in Midtown Manhattan reminded us, these colors don't run. Meanwhile, this has been Wall Street Week. I'm Louis Rukeyser. Good night, and please stay tuned for more of PBS's America Responds.